Formal assessment can usually be completed within 2 to 3 student sessions, and in many situations, students enjoy the assessment process. Many of the ones that I've chosen have pictures, games, toys, and are often enjoyable for the students. So once the assessment is completed, you can begin to plan the intervention program. You do that by compiling all your assessment results, meeting with the parents, caregivers, and teachers to discuss the results of the assessment, and then setting up some sort of formalized meeting to discuss what type of program would be appropriate. And of course, within your school jurisdiction, there might be a different set of protocols or practices. In my jurisdiction, we set up an identification, placement, and review committee in order to discuss what type of program the child will get, and we discuss the individual education program that addresses the specific needs of the student. At this time, you would also look at what type of program the student may require. Do they require just a monitoring support? If they're at age-appropriate levels, they don't need a direct intervention program. Or do they need more direct service? How often do they need support? And do they need a much more intensive programming plan that can't be accomplished within a mainstream setting within a typical hearing class? In which case you would look at a partially self-contained program. So let me go into just a little bit more detail of what exactly is an individual education plan. We call them IEPs, and I'm not sure what's used in most of the jurisdictions around the world. So an individual education plan, or an IEP, is usually mandated by a government. It lists accommodations, modifications, and alternative programming goals. So accommodations are just, how are you helping the student achieve their goals within the classroom? Modifications would mean you're actually changing the age-appropriate curriculum to meet the needs of that student. And alternative programming goals usually means our auditory verbal intervention goals, goals that are not within any curriculum, but goals that we would do specifically to meet the needs of those deaf and hard of hearing students. I'm going to show you a clip of Jason doing some spelling. And the purpose of this clip is to demonstrate how you would integrate auditory verbal goals with a curriculum subject. They would often involve my goals associated with audition, speech articulation, language, cognitive and academic, communication, and parent guidance. Because I often find that people come to me and ask, well, how do you find time to do auditory verbal intervention when you're so busy with curriculum and having to keep up with the classroom curriculum? This is a perfect example of how the two work together very closely and very seamlessly.
Man, foot, feet, teeth, tooth, teeth, mouse, mice, woman, dice.
That's money.
Dice.
It doesn't say dice. Dice is what you play with a game. This is 10 cents. You know what's another word for 10 cents?
Nickel.
No, nickel is 5 cents.
Dime.
Dime. Good.
Quarter.
How much money is a quarter?
25 cents.
You got it. Okay. You see these? What's interesting about these words?
They have E, but sometimes they have more than one. But the man, it means one, but man, it means
Man means one. You're right. Man means?
It means
more than one. So in that clip of Jason, I was pre-teaching spelling words from the grade 2 curriculum. I had specific auditory goals for him. You might not have noticed, but at that time he only had one cochlear implant, and I was sitting on the side of his cochlear implant, slightly behind him, and the entire session was conducted through audition alone. That specific spelling lesson also enabled me to address another auditory verbal goal, looking at regular and irregular plurals and understanding and using the possessive S. In terms of cognitive concepts, we were working directly on school grade 2 spelling curriculum. And you'll notice that by asking and answering questions, not only was I working on some of the listening goals that I had set up for him, but also conversational competence in terms of asking and answering questions. So that was a very good clip showing an auditory verbal education lesson directly related to curriculum. Here's another clip of Jason, also in grade 2, 3 years post-cochlear implant, and at this time he only had one cochlear implant. He's doing an auditory tracking activity with one of his reading books. So have a look.
Next year, said
Oh.
Mrs.
You said next year. In this book, it says this year.
You got it, said Mrs. Taylor. Are you watching?
Yeah.
Instead of doing only the sprint races, you can try sleeping a longer race.
You said you can try sleeping in this book. You can try running.
Oh, good. You can also try the long jump and the high jump. Carl said to Sean, I might be able to lose something now.
He said, yeah, I might be to lose in this book. I might to be to win.
Oh, good job. Okay, you try it with me.
Every year, field day. Sean won to the race.
You said every year, field day. You didn't say on. And then I missed what else you said. Do that again.
Every year on field day, Sean lose. Oh. Yes.
He said every year on field day, Sean lose, but he didn't. It says here Sean won. Okay.
Sean won.
So you'll notice from the clip that I specifically focused on an area of the curriculum. It was a literacy, part of the literacy curriculum. It was a book that he was using for his guided reading group. We had done a lot of work on that in advance, pre-teaching the vocabulary, working on the speech, working on certain aspects of sentence structure, and now we're pulling it all together. So that was specifically curriculum. In terms of my auditory verbal intervention goals, you'll notice that we focused on speech, speaking words clearly, making sure he pronounces the ends, word end, the final sounds in words. I had auditory goals that were quite advanced at this point because he was doing quite well on his 3rd year post-implant. He was processing everything through audition alone. He was listening to sentences, and he was able to identify words that were embedded in a sentence that were incorrect, and he was able to change them. In terms of language, when it was his turn to read, you might have noticed that he made a mistake in the first clip by leaving out a function word, and I identified that as he was doing it on purpose, so as not to make him feel bad, but that was one of my goals as well, making sure he puts all those words in his sentences, and that was a very good activity to point out to him how he has to have all his words when he's using standard English sentences. So you can see that that was a very good integrated auditory verbal lesson integrated with curriculum. My final clip shows Jason again 2 years later when he's in grade 4. I thought it would be good to choose something a little different, something that people wouldn't normally associate that we can integrate auditory skills together with. So I chose a mathematics clip. Have a look.
Quadrilateral. Quadrilateral. Why? So let's read this.
Why is this quadrilateral not a square?
What is that quadrilateral? What shape is it?
Rectangle?
Rectangle. So why is it not a square?
Because rectangle to have all same equal same all four same. Because rectangle don't have four equal sides.
Excellent. You absolutely have it.
The clip you just watched shows me working with Jason, pre-teaching a lesson in mathematics. You'll notice that even in grade 4, I took him out of the classroom because in order to integrate the skills that he was doing, it was very important for him to be able to listen, have the time he needed, and to be able to verbalize what his ideas were. Note how long I had to wait for him to be able to give me the correct answer. That's a really good auditory verbal strategy, and one that is really hard to use and almost impossible to use when you're in the mainstream class. So that would be a really good reason why you would take the students out into a quiet environment. You'll notice that speech was a big part of the math lesson. Listening, he was listening the entire time, processing everything auditorily, listening to how the words were pronounced in mathematics, and being able to express his ideas clearly using a coherent sentence. In our jurisdiction, I'm sure it's the same all over, mathematics curriculums are becoming more and more language-based, and students have to be able to describe what they're doing. And that's where an auditory verbal approach is very helpful.